Hi, welcome to the Marketing Podcast. I'm Heather Watson.
And I'm Brendan Quigley.
Happy anniversary, Brendan.
It is. Well, it's past, right?
Shush. They don't know that.
Well,
They'll know that.
If they're paying attention, it says episode 53.
Yeah. Yeah, this is our 53rd episode. And today we are talking about us, our anniversary. It's going to be a wrap-up show. It'll be fun. Brendan has no idea what's going on. He's like, I'm just going to roll with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to nod my
Yeah.
head.
So earlier, a couple weeks ago, I guess I dropped a little teaser that we are going to be doing some fun stuff for a new season that we're about to launch. And Brendan and I are having a lot of fun working on the planning around that. And we've started to record some of those shows. But we wanted to kind of say goodbye to this particular season because it's been an epic long season. And I thought, why not do like a little send-off show to season one by talking about things that worked, things that didn't work, memorable moments, what we've learned from it, and maybe drop a few hints about what season 2 will look like. And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
I'm looking forward to the seasons.
The seasons like winter, spring.
You mean winter, still winter, and road construction?
Well, that's our hockey season.
I actually came up with a new seasons joke. Like the butter's too cold, the butter's too hot, and the butter's just right.
Okay.
It's like this time in the spring and the fall where butter spreads perfectly.
Right. Okay.
On track. Back on track.
Back on track. So that's what we're talking about today. So if you're interested in podcasting, if you're interested in kind of a behind the scenes of what we've done for the podcast over the last year, this is the episode for you. If you want to hear about how to apply things to your business and marketing and stuff like that, not so much. So, listen, keep listening. But if you don't, you've been warned. So let's look back. I mean, we have done consecutively 52 weeks in the studio, recording the Marketing Podcast, this being our 53rd week. And we have gone through different iterations of how we organize it and things that have worked as we've been feeling it a way out. What do you think, Brendan, as I turn on to it, a bit of an interviewer here, what do you think worked or some of the biggest growing pains that we've had or challenges? Where do you want to start?
Well, there's also the 6 episodes that never saw the light of day.
That's right.
Or was it 7?
It was 6 episodes.
6 episodes.
The episode 1 was episode 7.
So I would have to say having the right equipment and it set up and ready to go has been one of the best decisions we made because it meant that we could focus on the content.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even just in those first 6 episodes, forget the equipment. I mean, we were messing around with the equipment, but even getting a good flow, how we were is it going to be interview style? Is it going to be, we had these articles we knew we wanted to talk about. How are we talking about it? Are we scripting it?
And it's really hard to just randomly talk into a microphone.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to throw that out there. Like, we're 53 now, well, plus 6, but we're into it now. Like, that first episode, I barely knew what to say.
Like the first one that we actually aired or the first one? I remember the first one we did.
Yeah.
And we actually did video of that. I wonder if we still have that. That would be fun. Feel those awkward moments.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because there comes a point where I think once you have the right equipment in place, being able to let go and just really talk about what you're there to talk about, because we were those first episodes, even when we started actually publishing, the real episode 1, 2, 3, we were printing out, or I was printing out the articles, highlighting areas that we wanted to talk about, like physically writing on them so I didn't miss anything.
We were talking about a lot of stuff too. Like one of the pieces of feedback anecdotally I got is like, oh my goodness, content, in the sense that we covered so much in one episode.
Right.
So we even scaled that back a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Further on, we kind of went down to a bit of segment.
Yeah.
Right? We created 4 segments and kept those articles and tried to keep them on a particular theme so they could
marketing.
Relate.
I'm just joking.
On a particular theme within marketing. I think one of the most common themes was Facebook. It was a big year for Facebook.
Well, that's the year, right?
Yeah. But when we were able to loop them together in a particular theme, we could reference from one to the other. And
that's definitely part of it, right? Like you see some news and you're like, hot diggity. We get to talk about that on the podcast.
Yeah. And I have to say, I mean, even just doing the research. So just to give a little bit of background to our listeners of how we put this thing together every week, usually about 2 hours before we go into the studio, I start flipping through the internet.
Busted.
Yeah. I start flipping through the internet rampantly. looking for articles. And doing that every time we went into the studio, and it's allowed me to really stay up to date, like to find out, it's like, oh, shoot, that's going on.
Yeah, and
or
we
look
have
what
our-
these guys have done. And
We have our sources. Like we have like
like a catalog of bookmarks, if you will. Like I've got a folder of bookmarks in Chrome that I go to regularly that are good sources. Or if I would be, occasionally, I think we both started doing this for a while as we're reading the news every day, doing our thing. If something kind of crossed our desk, we would send it to Trello. And we do use Trello as kind of our season organizer, or episode organizer. So we have a giant Trello board, and each episode is a single column in Trello. And then we have a couple of other rogue columns that are just random articles and stuff that we want to talk about but haven't been able to talk about. And then when we're looking for it, we just start kind of dragging those cards into make individual episodes as we're building stuff up. So I have to say that 2 hours before we go into studio, where I flip open and start looking and reading marketing news, basically, through the different reliable sources that we use, has really helped me stay on top of new developments and be topical just in industry when I'm talking to people. Because often I find that we're, head down, working on our client files, doing the stuff that we do. And this forces me to kind of look up and do kind of a scan every week of the environment to then think about and perhaps include in a podcast or not, just to have an awareness of it and be topical when we're talking to our clients and out in industry. So I think that's been pretty cool.
It's funny you say that.
Why?
I'm scanning through our Trello board with all of the episodes.
Oh, yeah?
Can you guess our first episode?
Welcome to podcasting?
No, like the first article in the first episode?
No. Facebook?
No, close. But I have literally quoted this episode with clients for the last year.
Really?
And it's the one that talks about how Wendy's does their social media.
Oh, yeah.
The nugs and sass. But one of the things that was really cool in there is they said that like Wendy's chose the voice of Chris Pratt from Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's right.
So that the whole team could have the same persona.
Yeah.
When they were using social media. I've literally quoted that for the last year.
Yeah.
Just to complement
Just
this.
anecdotally.
Keeping on top of the industry,
Yeah.
It's been super beneficial for that.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So that actually leads me to my next question. Do you have, and you've got the whole Trello thing open in front of you, so no cheating. Do you have a particular episode that stands out in your mind, a memorable episode, or one that you point to a lot besides that one article you just referenced?
Funny, that would have been the one. So let me think of another one. I guess the Senate stuff with Facebook was pretty big.
Yeah.
Like it was fun to give input on that.
Yeah, and there was so much Facebook.
It
was like another Facebook episode.
And then you know what?
Week.
The GDPR stuff was super relevant.
Yeah.
And I found that relevant because literally everything I was reading, everything I was seeing, the plugins I was using for WordPress, the affiliate programs we were part of, everything was going GDPR.
Yeah.
Over that 2-3 week period.
Yeah.
So that was really cool to do a little bit of research and speak to that point
and understand it, right? Yeah. So memorable for me, not because of the design, but what happened. And I don't even know the episode number, but remember the one where the alarm was going off?
Oh yeah,
in the booth.
Yeah.
It wasn't like there's a control room next to our booth, and it was a loud alarm, and we kept on stopping and starting and stopping.
We tried to just do the take over again.
Yeah. Because normally when we record this, we're doing this as a continuous take. We'll just talk our way through it and we're done. There's been the odd occasion where we've had to stop because of, fire alarms or complete, all things have gone off the rails, but that's been really odd. But in this particular occasion, an alarm went off. So then we're like, okay, well, let's just back it up and we'll redo that segment. And then we got halfway through it, re-recording it, and then the alarm went off again and we had to back it up. And I think we backed it up 3 or 4 times to the point where we stopped.
Yeah.
And we laughed our way through it, and the alarm carried on again. And I don't know if there's.
I didn't even stop. I refused.
Yeah.
We just kept going.
Yeah. And that was super memorable. Just kind of, it just became a calamity of a show. My favorite one, and I don't even think it was the official marketing podcast. I think it was one of the radio extras.
Right. Yeah.
Was on Super Bowl.
Oh, yes.
That one was really, really fun for me because I love watching Super Bowl for that reason. So being able just to nerd out on Super Bowl ads.
Who won the Super Bowl?
Who played in the Super Bowl? I'm sorry, football fans. I have no idea who was even playing, much less who won. But being able to watch and really kind of take notes, and I was on the radio, I think the day after or a couple of days after Super Bowl Sunday, and do a big debrief on it. And I think we even did an episode, a longer episode on some of the Super Bowl, like it was a pre-Super Bowl episode actually, like some of the ones who we were expecting to see and who we weren't expecting to see. So to me, it's like, you know, when people like in Emmy Award season or Grammy, like in awards season, all those like fashion people get together and it's like, who's wearing what? And so-and-so is rumored to be sporting this. I'm like that with the Super Bowl ads. So I felt like really legit by being able to go on the radio and talk about it and then come and do the podcast show about it. It was just fun for me to nerd out that way.
So I've got another good one.
Go for it.
Remember the Lady Doritos?
Lady Doritos.
And like, I think we had a lot of fun with it, but man, we could have milked that one for so much more.
Yeah.
So that was just a funny topic.
The pinkifying of things. And I think that got me onto pink camo, a bit of a pink camouflage rant, which I still don't like. And now it's going to haunt me.
Yep.
Cool. So just talking a little bit about our systems and processes, because I think a lot of people who know that we're doing the podcast, that we see in our lives, ask us how it all comes together. And I think we've kind of hit on that, where we do some article research. We flesh it out into a Trello board. Is that my chair squeaking? I hear a chair squeaking. It's yours. We flesh it out into a Trello board. We come into the studio. We record. And then what happens, Brendan? Because I don't even know. No, I write show notes. I'm responsible for doing the show notes on it, which goes into a Google document. But it's like just high level stuff. I found some of the lessons I learned on that is like write them right away, as opposed to trying to do them a week later, because then you actually just have to listen to it again to remember what the heck you talked about. At least I found I just can't retain it. So pretty much within 24 hours of recording an episode, I'll write the show notes. And then what happens?
And then we edit it. So I put all the pieces together. And we've gotten really good over the year. We don't need to do so much editing inside the episode, but we usually tack on the intro and the outro and like the what's happening and if there's an ad on the front or something like that. So once all that gets edited, it then gets uploaded. And there's a whole bunch actually of like podcast hosts. Surprise, surprise. Something you didn't know existed. Mm-hmm. But really what they're doing is they're sorting your audio file, and they're providing like a link.
It's like an RSS feed, is it not?
Yeah.
Is that the terminology?
And it's a link to like an XML document for nerds, but basically it's listing all the important information for each of the episodes: the title, the description, the author, the where the actual audio file locates. And then, if you've ever wanted to know, you give iTunes and you give Google Play and you give Stitcher and you give TuneIn Radio and you give Pocket Cast. You go out and give all these places your XML link. And then that way they just import your next episode automatically.
Right.
And that's how it ends up in your podcast player.
Right. So you only give them all those links once.
Yeah.
And then you upload it into the podcast host, and then it pushes it out to all of those different platforms.
Yeah. And even if you do a change, it'll just like update it and go out.
Yeah.
So it's super cool and super easy. Like if you've got audio that you're doing on YouTube or audio that you're like hosting on your website, like it is quite easy to get it. And there are some free hosts as well to get it sent to iTunes, which really gives you some legitimacy if you're trying to put out a podcast.
Right. So bumps in the road. Any lessons that we've learned in the editing, like the post-production process?
The single take is definitely easier.
Yeah.
Right? As in like I guess I would like to move towards a more like, transitions between sections in the podcast or something like that. But that takes more editing. So you really got to like decide what your podcast is going to do. Like if you listen to a typical like radio show, they're really set up. Like they've got transitions at their fingertips. Like that's how they're able to like move from one thing to another. And there's a lot of like canned recorded content that they slot into places, giving them time to think before the next section or bit that they do live. So when you're looking at your podcast, it's kind of like, what kind of podcast do you want? And we really wanted the conversation. Like we didn't really want things to jump in between and interrupt. Like we could have a 20-second musical interlude right now, and I'm tempted to edit that in, but it would interrupt our conversation,
right?
Which was what we were looking for.
Yeah.
Now some of the really popular podcasts that are like more investigative journalism or storytelling, they use these elements quite well
to add drama.
Exactly.
And we had talked to a lot of professionals in the industry, in the broadcasting industry, before we started doing it about, how do we form out the show, having segments and creating hooks so that people coming up, boom, 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 boom. But first, blah, to keep people engaged, right? And we started doing that, but it felt a little too outside of our comfort zone. Like it just felt too salesy, I think, for a while. And we really just wanted to provide good content. We've always wanted to provide just good content that's relevant to who we believe our audience is, and that's small to medium-sized businesses. So taking those big stories that the companies big companies, Amazon and the Facebook and those companies are doing, and distilling that down into how it impacts your business as a small, medium business owner, and taking some of those tools and tips to be able to deploy them within your business. So knowing that and just wanting to be truly authentic in the conversation that we have, we don't want the hooks. The hooks are hopefully you just love the content that we have and you're going to listen to us. We don't need to, bribe you or bait you to keep trying to stay listening to us. You're either going to listen or not. I get enjoyment about recording the podcast, whether or not you listen, and not that we don't love our listeners, but really it's a good process for us.
And to that point, we are our advertiser. We don't have to do the podcast a certain way or include certain things because of advertisers. We're able to do this ourselves, and so we've been doing this ourselves. So I would say that one thing we haven't done is actively or aggressively look for sponsorship.
Sponsors, yep.
Yeah. Which is good in many ways.
We can control the format and control the show and not feel like we're having to be loyal to advertisers.
And we're never stressed about metrics. Ever.
Yeah. And by all means, though, if somebody does want to sponsor the podcast,
this is it.
We'll take your money.
Or free pizza.
Free pizza. We've never heard from Pap. That's my single regret right there. Papa John's. Where have you been?
Well, let's just say they had some issues this year.
They did. Yeah. They did have a busy summer with some concerns there. So I think that's it. And we're talking about this like the podcast is going to go away, and it's not. We are just changing how we're going to be doing the podcast in a big way. But at the heart of it is still going to be talking about marketing to small to medium businesses and how they can apply tools, tips, resources to their business. But I think we're going to, I know, we're going to be making it more finite. So instead of having a themed podcast that's talking about 4 news articles, we'll really just be talking about, one very specific marketing related thing in each episode. And I'm really excited about that because will allow people to take a topic and deep dive into that particular topic. And we'll be giving them, our listeners, kind of tangible things that they can do and take away for their businesses if that's a particular tactic in marketing that they want to deploy, I guess is the mouthful way of saying it. And there will be more resources associated with the podcast. So in addition to hearing our voices, we have some blogging that's going to be complementing it as opposed to just show notes, and even toying with some video right now to complement it as well. So
and
what? There's more?
There's more. Well, we haven't totally decided yet, but there's a higher chance of having a guest on the podcast.
There is.
Experts in the field. So.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that piece. Yeah.
No one,
So
we'll let you know.
Yeah, and we are moving to seasons, and it's not going to be a 52-week season because it is so, if anything I've learned doing
That's
52
true.
weeks, it doesn't give us a break to be able to. I mean, granted, we would do a couple of episodes at a time, so we would actually have a break. We're not in the studio every single week. However, it doesn't allow us to do a lot of time for planning for what the next season will look like. So we're going to do shorter seasons in sprints, if you will. So we will be taking a bit of a break after the next episode. We'll take a bit of a break, and we're going to come back with this new branded podcast, and you'll hear more and more about that. Is that it?
Yes, I'm nodding.
You're not. I'm like
52 weeks.
52 weeks, and
still
you're
nodding.
still nodding at me. Yes, it's an audio podcast, not a video podcast.
Can you hear the nod?
Yeah,
No?
it's like my neck is cracking.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, thank you. If you've just joined us, feel free to go back and listen to the last 52 episodes and laugh at us.
First episode, that first article, it's a good one.
It's a good one, but I don't know about the production value. We've grown a lot since episode 1, but thank you so much for being on this journey with us, and stay tuned for more. We'll just keep hitting up your podcast player, and we'll be back. Keep an eye out for us from the Marketing